Hi everyone, this is Alex Newton from K-lytics with the Kindle market trends for January 2016. So let's have a look. This is data from our January 2016 K-lytics basic report, which looks at the 30 main categories that you find on Amazon Kindle. So let's have a look at which one of these has the highest sales. The ranking has not changed over Christmas and the New Year's Eve period. Literature and fiction is still outselling nonfiction, and three genres, romance, mystery, thriller, suspense, and science fiction and fantasy, continued to dominate the platform. And when you look at it over time, you see fiction is very stable up there. Nonfiction has its peak in the year end, so we just hit here December 2015 where we reached a very high point, but as you see in the prior years, that usually goes back down during spring and summer. Within fiction, a couple of trends to point out. Mystery and thriller continues on its upward trend. From a 12-month perspective, shorter term here, it took a little bit of a dive in October, November, December 2015, but still it's very stable. It's an excellent genre. We just published our special report on it, which revealed great niches to explore here. I think it's one of the most exciting genres currently on Kindle. Romance is on the same level as a year ago. The genre took a bit of a dive here in December, but it's not dropping below the level it had a year ago. Science fiction and fantasy throughout the whole year 2015 has been much more stable and less volatile than the year before. And what is extremely interesting is that the prices in this genre have clearly recovered. Well, in fact, they've reached a new peak here in December 2015, which is clearly a signal that the reader is going for quality again in this genre. Also here we have a special report if you're interested on this number 3 fiction genre on the Kindle platform, where we look at here, for example, in fantasy, at the various submarkets. This is just a snapshot here, identifying those ones where you have a high level of sales versus a comparatively low level of competition. In nonfiction, let's have a look at the self-help market. Here, throughout the end of 2015 in December, we clearly see this upward swing here. Also from a longer term perspective, if we neglect this autumn spike here, it's overall an upward trend, but mind you, we've seen the same upward motion towards the year end in the last year, and then in spring it dropped. So it remains to be seen whether the pattern is going to be repeated, but I think it's intuitive that the whole genre goes up for the new year, all the New Year's resolutions, but then as soon as we hit summertime, people have other things in mind. Very similar here, cookbooks, food and wine. The December has clearly reached its peak, and here it remains to be seen whether it's a bit more sustainable. If I look at the trends in the year before, we've seen a similar trend, although a little bit earlier here in November, and then the whole genre took a bit of a break again throughout the year. But let's keep fingers crossed, because there are also genres where the typical seasonal trend is not necessarily repeated. For example, in crafts, hobbies and home, the sales have been very flat here during the whole end of 2015 versus the year before. We've seen this significant upswing in October, November, where the whole autumn Halloween period started. We haven't seen this year. So, there can be seasonal patterns, but they don't have to be, and sometimes they can also be a little bit deceiving. And in the mixed fiction, non-fiction arena, one thing to point out is clearly children's ebooks, which have seen here this very steep increase towards November, December this year, Christmas time. Now, mind you, also in the year before, we had the same increase here, but there, at least I found, it was much more induced by the introduction of the Amazon Kids Book Creator back in the mid of 2014 at the time. And what is encouraging was that this upward trend in kids book, was not at the expense of like super steep discounting of the prices. In fact, the prices have been fairly stable up there in this band between here $5.50 and $6 in the top 100 bestseller list. And this whole short-term growth, which we call rank momentum here, the growth in sales from one month to the other, the rise and drop in the sales rank from one month to the other. We've seen this also here in comics and graphic novels, humor and entertainment, very popular in December 2015. And this growth came at the expense of the bigger genres here, like romance, which took a bit of a break over the holidays. Have a look at the report for the average prices and their development in the top genres. I'm not going to cover it in the video today. What I wanted to point out though is some interesting dynamics in the degree of competition, which we measure by the number of titles in each of the genres. And there was one very interesting development. This is here the static view, and you see the real highly competitive genres are, well, first of all, nonfiction is much more saturated than fiction, as we would expect. And you see these huge number of titles here in religion and spirituality, romance, as well as children's and ebooks. But what I wanted to point out is the change of the number of titles versus the prior month, where we've seen usually across the board, this is around 2.5, 2.6% month by month on Kindle, which equates to about 25% growth over the year in book supply. But look at this here. This is comics and graphic novels, which increased their supply by more than 30% in just 1 month. And we had a similar development the months before. I think this is very much owing to the shift towards the Kindle Fire device that Amazon has also hugely been promoting. So I'm sure we're going to see more developments in also fixed layout, colorful books, magazine style books on the Kindle platform. At least some people are pushing books into this segment in a big way. And have a look for yourself in the report for the average number of pages that we observe in each of the genres, as well as the whole data summary for each of the genres mentioned. And then, very important, have a look at the power index. It's very interesting what happens if you create a measure that compounds, meaning takes together sales volume, sales growth, rank improvement, which we call rank momentum, price realization, effort, and degree of competition. A very interesting view on the market. So go check it out. If you're not a member yet, you can download one issue for free. No need to take notes. You can download it at K-lytics.com/free report. And as you know, for our monthly premium and elite members, we cover all this market intelligence in much deeper fashion for up to 2,800 Kindle submarkets. So come and join us at K-lytics.com. I look forward to talking to you in the next month. This is Alex Newton from K-lytics, ebook market intelligence for success.